Welcome back. I'm breaking down Encounters by Diana Pasulka. It's kind of a sequel to American Cosmic. If you want to check out that review, it should have a little card up here. I gotta say, it wasn't as impactful as American Cosmic, sadly. It ended up just being like a sampler of a whole bunch of interesting things that really hits home to somebody if they're stuck in this materialist worldview of the UFO phenomena. But it's called Encounters for the same reason that people call the phenomena in general, not UFO phenomena, UAP phenomena, just the phenomena, because the deeper you dive into this, the more it gets really strange. It's just, they call it high strangeness because it's logic jamming, really. You can't really figure it out. UFOs are teleporting, going through walls, are acting weird. They break down in the middle of the street. There's just things that the aliens and UFOs do that don't make any sense. And that's why the critics often point out that these stories must be lies. But after so many stories and them being caught in so many different ways, from video to camera to, I don't know, tons of other radar data, there's just too much evidence to ignore the phenomena, to ignore these encounters. That being said, a critique of the book is that it's more of a shotgun approach. Like I said, it's a sampler. You get a ton of cool things touched on, but nothing with any real deep detail. So I do hope to make dedicated videos on a lot of these topics. She touches on some of the weirdness of space effects on people, from zero-G laziness, and there were sounds heard and things seen by the Apollo 10 astronauts that just get ignored because of the grander theories that it never happened. Those sillier conspiracy theories make it so that if you bring up some of these things, you get dismissed as like a fake moon landing guy. Which should also be a whole video, because that isn't as dumb a theory as people think. Sadly, NASA lied about a lot of stuff, so they deserve it. She gets into how it's becoming more mainstream to notice the high strangeness of all this. She has people that were, normal Christian believers that are starting to think that the UFO phenomenon isn't, an advanced species out there, just like an alien race like Star Trek or Star Wars or something. Mass Effect is great, but they're actually more like spirit beings. It's more of a religious dynamic than a lot of people understand. And there's a large part specifically on Archangel Michael encounters. There's book synchronicities, which she mentions a lot in American Cosmic. It was true for her when it came to Nietzsche, and just about every UFO experiencer she talks with, there was some form of book synchronicity, all the way back to St. Augustine's famous story where he had been struggling with the Manichaeism religion, and he heard a child outside singing, "Pick it up and read, pick it up and read." It had a melody that made him think it was just a song, but it hit him that this might be a sign from God to read the Bible. And so a lot of people that have these encounters also have a book synchronicity. Somehow a very specific niche UFO book will pop up in their lives just after this event. In really strange ways. It's not like they're just browsing the UFO section at Barnes& and Nobles. A family member might be cleaning out the attic and come across an old book. It happens to be on the exact type of phenomena that they just experienced. Cosmogenesis by Pierre Teilhard de Chardin was written in 1922 and talks about the noosphere, a superconscious generated at a global level. Think about how if each of our neurons makes our mind, each of our minds make up the neurons of this greater brain, this greater global human mind. It sounds like something straight out of a post-internet sci-fi like Ghost in the Shell or something, but this guy was talking about this in 1922. And a really cool thing that gives us a sequel vibe to American Cosmic is that she gets into stories of the kids of the Invisibles. The Invisible College is a term that goes all the way back to the Rosicrucians in the medieval era. It was an informal network of researchers that feared church persecution, and J. Allen Hynek called his group of researchers the Invisible College as well. This was back in the 50s and 60s when he was working on Project Blue Book, and these researchers were all starting to realize that the government wasn't interested in actually finding out what was going on with UFOs, but just covering it up, using scientists to act as authority figures and just get the public to dismiss it. Really, this goes back to at least the 40s, like she mentions in this book, and a lot of those invisibles have kids, grandkids at this point, and so the invisibles she works with explains her really strange childhood. They're living almost like secret agents, running whole parallel lives in a parallel sort of guerrilla war, not with actual violence, I think, but a sort of, they're waging a lifelong mission against this system that's trying to cover this whole thing up. One of the annoying things for me was how she kind of brushes over this whole, there's a shared dream space idea. She claims that there's these guys in Silicon Valley, these high level entrepreneurs that literally meet in the dream space, like their whole work teams, instead of meeting on teams like on the internet, they're actually, which sounds like a nightmare. They're going to sleep and hanging out with their coworkers even while they're sleeping in this shared dream space. Imagine working all day in your Meta VR glasses, falling asleep at work, and Zuck's in there with you. But the point is, me and my wife have huge sympathies to that idea. We had a shared sort of dream. It was a very, very strange experience where it wasn't exactly the same. It would be like two cultures having a flood myth where, like, a lot of the details are the same. You're building a boat, big old flood's coming, you're putting animals on, but then specific names and, even like colors and where we were. Like mine was more foresty, hers was more like city. It was weird, but it was the same idea. We were both looking for a kid, we had the same problems. Tons of details were exactly the same. And it wasn't related to anything we were watching, anything like that. But it's just another example of how many cool things she brings up in this book, but none of them are really explored at great depth. Almost all of them could be at least short books on their own. But I do think she does a good job in the overall point of trying to get across that this is not just, like I said, some sort of Mass Effect, other flesh and blood alien creatures that are just more advanced in tech. It is not that. They definitely have the ability to mess with our minds. And the very definition of that, from how we perceive things, our sense environment, to memory, to emotions for sure, to the same event being perceived. There's one couple, it seems like it's definitely affected by your worldview. The wife was like a strict Catholic and she saw it as an angel, and the husband was an atheist and he saw it more as a machine typical alien kind of thing. She's working with Jacques Vallée on a lot of these points, and I really got to get into his books because it seems like he's the one that really pushed and pioneered this idea of it not being flesh and blood alien people. It's definitely a hyper-dimensional kind of mental phenomena, at least, as well. I'm not sure if valet has a special term for this. Please, if anybody knows, let me know in the comments down below. But what I came up with is like they're logic jammers. They intentionally put all these kind of details that they just don't make sense when you put them together. It seems to want to destroy our reasoning faculty, to make us just have faith, and that's the really scary part. It might be to make us have faith in them. I'm currently reading the Three Body Problem books. I'm on the second one now, and that is obviously the huge theme in that. If you've seen the Netflix show, you know enough. Basically, the Sophons from them, they have the ability to manipulate our senses in a way that'll really make you appreciate the Buddha. Even Jesus, get behind me, Satan, stuff like that. But just, I'm thinking more of Buddha with Mara when he's being attacked by all the different forms and temptations and just this overwhelming deception, the illusion of Mara, and Buddha just stays calm and isn't swayed one way or the other. For reasons that still confuse everybody that's trying to research this, it seems like alien encounters have been going on since the earliest human recorded experiences. This whole Sitchin thing with the Anunnaki and the heavens and the gods, and he literally made up so much stuff there. Look up videos on all that. But it's true that, everybody thinks that the gods come from heaven. They're doing all this weird stuff, and they also show up in very seemingly flesh and blood human forms, right? Even in the Bible, he walks in the garden. In every culture, these gods or at least angels can take on human form and sit with people, eat with them, talk with them, but then also be spinning wheels of eyes and blazing fiery face body things. They seem to be able to manipulate our senses however they want. And if you take that dark theme from the three body problem, it's that these aliens are actually trying to slow human progress. That logic jamming I mentioned, they're trying to destroy our reason and therefore our tech and how we can understand the world around us. But that's where I am still a little bit confused about her position. She is definitely being cryptic. She's for some reason not wanting to say it explicitly. She has a whole esoteric reading that she wants to put into her book, that she at least seems to want it to be a funnel to Catholicism. When she mentioned the encounters of Teresa of Avila in American Cosmic, and in this one, when the whole lengthy section on the encounters with the Archangel Michael, they didn't seem like she was critiquing Catholicism. Whereas everything else, if you put it together, this logic jamming, reason destroying faculty of these aliens, acting just like the Trisolarans from the Three Body Problem book, I'm not sure why she isn't more skeptical of Catholicism. The only way I can make sense of it is by how she closes out the book. The last chapter is called The End of an Allegory. An allegory is a story, poem, or picture that can be interpreted to reveal a hidden meaning, typically a moral or political one. In that chapter, she talks about how Plato saw his master Socrates be killed by his society, so that's why Plato taught an allegory. Quote, "It was a secret code, a way of transmitting knowledge to others who had to remain invisible or suffer a similar fate." That's that tie back to the invisible college. So, how that connects to these supernatural encounters in our modern day is that to the uninitiated, Plato was just telling odd tales about men in caves. But really, he was calling out the rulers of society, calling out, at the very least, the humans in power. But it could also be seen as calling out the gods, the archons, or hyperdimensional spirits, aliens, whatever they are. These beings that keep us mesmerized by the shadows cast by their true nature that is always hidden just out of sight. What we call aliens are these fellas holding up these sticks, keeping us looking at the wrong thing, these hallucinations generated in our senses, when really we have to find a way to get behind this to actually see what the phenomena is. And so you combine all that with the fact that she's always talking praisingly of the Gnostics in a way that I've really never seen any other Christian do. There's a chapter in this book called Gnostic, and she brings them up in interviews all the time. Not to say that the Gnostics were all one group, but the general idea that Gnostics would be called mystics by the modern, large, organized faiths, and the idea that they believed in a direct experience with God. She says she's a Catholic, but she seems to definitely be a sort of Gnostic Catholic, as much sense as that can make. I think it's that she sees, and definitely hopes, that there's a lot wider view or interpretation of the religion than what a lot of people think. Like some of the stuff modern Franciscans say that sounds more Eastern or heretical to Bible Belt American preachers. I'm thinking of Richard Rohr specifically. But despite a lot of Franciscan teachings, and especially Richard Rohr sounding odd and blasphemous to a lot of American preachers, the Franciscans are actually the largest order within Catholicism. And with her love of Gnosticism, there's also a constant mentioning of Prometheus. If she's gonna say she's Catholic, I gotta assume she at least does like Jesus, but I don't see how she can think Jesus is Yahweh. How she could see that he's the same God that sent the flood, that ordered the destruction of the Tower of Babel. When Yahweh said, "If as one people speaking the same language they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan will be impossible for them." The same Yahweh who ordered whole groups murdered down to their children and livestock, and then gets mad when you don't do a total genocide. She seems to think that there is an active Prometheus-like figure within this supernatural alien phenomena, as modern-day people who have had encounters mention this receiving of tech, and there's a Promethean-like figure recorded throughout civilizations all throughout history. One of the gods who comes down and tries to help humanity, in opposition to the other god who's trying to hold us back, to confuse and control humanity, like the Yahweh figure. So while this book did touch on a bunch of different interesting topics, and maybe if you're new to this whole phenomena, you might find more use out of it, it didn't have that really cool aha moment or worldview shifting thing that you get from American Cosmic. It's that there's this force all throughout history that tries to make these supernatural encounters, it just wants to remove the real power behind them. It wants to make it mundane and normal. It takes angels that literally had flames for faces and flame bodies that were stabbing these, nuns, the Teresa of Avila case, and it turns it into just, your generic, standard, pretty human looking angel. And we get the same thing when you say, "Oh, I had an alien encounter." You go, "Oh, all right, what did you see? A saucer and little green men came out?" When really it's just these mind warping, super strange, surreal encounters that don't always follow that typical kind of movie blueprint. She dialed in on how everything from shows and movies are just continuing what the Catholic Church did, providing this sterilized version of these encounters to the public. From art in the Vatican to Spielberg movies, they're all showing you these non-human intelligences interacting with people, completely mind-blowing events that just become stereotyped. And it acts as this really nefarious cover to hide things in plain sight and say, "Look, we are talking about the events. You can't say our society doesn't talk about aliens," but it never talks about the true high strangeness of aliens. You can go to church, read from your Bible every week, and just never actually consider some of the high strangeness of angels and demons. So like I said, this book did get me hyped to read a bunch of other stuff in the UFO paranormal genre. I really want to get to stuff from Jacques Vallée. I've read a ton of Giorgiani's work. If you're watching a video like this, you should really check out his Close Encounters book. It does what she was trying to do here, but I think honestly with a lot more detail and depth. You'll understand that if they can travel in the ways that we've caught them traveling, then they would have to be time travelers if you understand how space-time works, which opens up a whole can of insanity. Really great stuff on the real Men in Black, these accounts of these people that show up to, someone who's seen an encounter, and you get these guys in suits, but guys is a very loose term. These things are very strange. It's that uncanny valley kind of thing where it's not quite human. Something's off, really freaky. There's owls involved. All that stuff is in Giorgiani's book. I read it a while ago, but I do hope to reread it and make a whole bunch of videos on it. And I'm realizing I have to get into Robert Anton Wilson as well. I see Prometheus Rising getting mentioned in these kinds of topics. And like I said, Pasulka's always bringing up Prometheus. It's a huge thing of Giorgiani's works. He's trying to push Prometheism as a modern, humanist, futurist kind of religion for humanity, seeing it as allied with the good alien spirits that help humanity, rebelling against the archons that want to enslave us, or at the very least realizing that that's a noble lie that will end up putting humanity in a better place. If you've read it, please let me know what you think about it down in the comments below, or any other ideas this discussion might have provoked. Please hit that like button, it really is the best way to help me out. Subscribe to see more and check out my other videos. Thanks, I'll see you next time.